Archives of Prasar Bharati presents the timeless treasure of golden era.
Hello and welcome to Living on the Edge. Speaking about welcomes, our correspondents are always received with open-hearted hospitality in the villages they visit. Industrial zones, on the other hand, are much more wary and circumspect about us. Vikram Purana of Bangalore seems to have sensed this, but he thinks there's great excitement in getting a story against formidable odds. On your program, I would wish you to bring out more of the action stuff, like the Greenpeace group at work on dangerous missions. Vikram, we are not activists, but there is sometimes danger in the work we do. When Shonar Joshi visited Raipur in Madhya Pradesh to gauge the extent of the pollution caused by the distilleries there, she was faced with overwhelming fear caused by the operation of the Liquor Mafia in the area. That there was much more brewing there apart from alcohol was obvious.
If you visited one industrialized town, you visited them all. They are congested and unappealing. As we traveled from Korba to Raipur, we expected nothing more than the same sad story. Unending pollution, human misery and buck passing. However, we got much more than we bargained for. Raipur is famous, or rather infamous, for its house of Kedia, which manufactures some of India's best known brands. But the image it has carefully cultivated would disintegrate if the harsh realities of its production are ever publicized. Iron walls can't insulate you from the sweet smell of decaying mollusks or the nauseous fumes that fill the air. Water from the factory flows into large tracts of land, converting what looked like this originally into dry, cracked earth.
पेट दर्द करता है, गैस भर जाता है और फसल जैसे उग गए वो माने हवा द्वारा पानी प्रदूषण घुस जाता है, वो जला देते हैं, पेड़ भी अच्छा नहीं होता है, पौधा उसका चावल भी ठीक नहीं आता है, खाने में स्वाद नहीं आता है।
इनके किसान क्या चले गए?
चले गए नहीं, कहाँ जाएंगे छोड़ के भाई अभी किसान लोग।
लेकिन उनकी जमीन तो अब बेकार हो गई है। बेकार
हो गए तो वैसे वैसे तो केडिया सबको खरीद रहा है।
केडिया जो है धमकी चमकी लगा के और कुछ लोगों को पटा के जमीन खरीद ली था, छोटा सा जमीन खरीदा और बाकी सरकारी जगह था, कब्जा कर लिया था। उसके हमारे लोगों ने विरोध किया, वहाँ पे नहीं, बिल्कुल नहीं देंगे।
No. Rather we have been threatened by politicians, by petty politicians, by big politicians to tow down their line, to pay them whatever price they demand, because they are the people who vote them.
Allegations and counter-allegations run in a circle. The buck never stops, like the waste from the factory, which has destroyed crops and polluted groundwater reserves.
हमने कई बार प्रदूषण नियंत्रण बोर्ड को बोले हैं, उसके बाद वो लोग कोई भी कार्रवाई नहीं करते हैं और आकर के मैनेजमेंट से मिल करके अपना पैसा लेकर के चले जाते हैं और उसके बाद में कोई भी कार्रवाई वो लोग नहीं करते।
We try not to flaunt any rule, but pollution rules are so rigorous and so unrealistic that it is very difficult to say that we have not ever violated any of that. But I don't remember. Water pollution is nil. There is no water pollution because unless the effluent goes out of the distillery, there cannot be any pollution.
Mr. Kedia is candid. He is right when he says the water goes out of the factory. Just where it goes is of course another matter.
वहाँ जो है टैंक बना दिए थे, टैंक बनाने के बाद क्या है उसमें जो सड़ रहा है वहाँ पानी, तो इन लोग अपने आहिस्ता से नाले में ले जाते थे और नाले में ले जाने के बाद क्या है अब अपनी मर्जी से खोलना है।
यहाँ से पानी क्या टाइम निकलता है?
यहाँ पानी 6 बजे के लपेट में।
और फिर यहाँ से कहाँ जाता है?
ये बहुत दूर तक निकला हुआ है, ऐसे खुले नाला।
Villagers claim fish are dying because of the contamination and that water is useless for drinking purposes.
Have you ever heard anyone dying due to distillery pollution or pollution from the distillery?
वन में एक बकरी चराने वाला एक ग्वाला था, उसने खारी नदी के पानी पीने के बाद में उसका 2 घंटे के बाद में मृत्यु हो गया। पहले जब पोस्टमार्टम किया गया उसके बाद में डॉक्टरों के माध्यम से बोला गया कि जो पानी पी करके जो सीधा पानी है उसको पी करके इसका मृत्यु हुआ है। उसके बाद में केडिया ने उसको पैसा देने के बाद में फिर गांव वाले को दबाव दिया कि आप लोग इस तरीके से रिपोर्ट मत करो, उनके परिवार को मैं पोसूंगा।
Why? Because they all want money. When you put a unit in village, the entire village, the entire population of the village wants this or that kind of benefit. Some wants road, some want mandir, some want money, some want employment. You can't satisfy everybody.
Makes you wonder what Mr. Kedia is in the business for, if not for the money. But that's another matter. Unlike other townships living on the edge has visited, there's a cloud of fear that hangs over Raipur. The fear of retribution makes people shy away from interviews. Those who did speak were vehement that money caused unhampered functioning of the distillery.
पैसा पानी की तरह कमा रहे हैं और पैसा जो है सब कुछ करा रहा है आजकल जो है, तो पैसे से सब खरीद ले रहे हैं लोगों को। शराब माफिया ही सरकार की तरह काम कर रही है और सरकार कहीं उससे नीचे दिखता है।
Mafia doesn't hold valid licenses.
पिस्तौल को ले लिए टीआई सलाम का और हमारे पास ऐसे लगा दिए कि हम तुमको छोड़ेंगे नहीं, क्योंकि तुम बहुत नेतागिरी करती हो, ऐसे करके। और टीआई सलाम वहाँ पर प्रशासनिक के लोग रहने के बावजूद भी उन लोग उसके ज़रिए से लेके हम लोग के ऊपर जो हमला किए और फिर वहाँ उनके गुंडे लोग भी राड वगैरह से मार पीट ये पूरा हाथ में लगा था।
Accounts such as these are not rare. There are many others with similar stories to tell. When we contacted the Deputy Inspector General of Police, CPG Unni, he hedged about, denied us an interview and directed us to the Superintendent of Police, Sarabjit Singh, who hedged about too and finally didn't speak to us on camera. The local MP, Mr. Arjun Singh, also declined to speak.
बहुत लोग हैं बस्ती वाले, सब अपने घर में ही ये सब चर्चा करते हैं, लेकिन कोई मतलब बात वहाँ तक पहुँचाने तक की हिम्मत नहीं रखता। पूंजीपति पार्टी हैं, इनके खिलाफ कोई आवाज़ दिया तो उनको दिन हो चाहे रात हो जो चाहे सो करें। इसके विषय में क्या कहें? हम तो एक हिम्मत ही भगवान के ऊपर अपना जो है विश्वास रख कर के इतना बोल दिया, अगर कुछ करते भी हैं तो कोई बात नहीं है।
हम जानते हैं केडिया छत्तीसगढ़ डिस्टिलरी में जोगाराव करके साथी काम करता था, उसने अपनी रोजी या कुछ संबंध में बात किया तो उसको जलवा दिया। उसी तरह भिलाई में कई लोगों को मैंने जिस पिटवा दिया, उसने कई लोगों को मार के कहीं फेंकवा दिया, कहीं लोगों को कुछ करा दिया। इस तरह का मारना इनका आम बात है।
When there has been no crime, so there is no question of covering that.
If seeing is believing and truth is stranger than fiction, then a visit to Raipur has all the ingredients of a masala movie. That the movie will have a happy ending is unlikely, because the last shot is likely to be that of jet black water, a metaphor for the gloom, fear and helplessness of Raipur's common people.
I once dreamt that I had been picked up from my home by some wild animal and taken away into the jungles. The only language I heard there were roars and howls, and it made me tremble. A lot of curious faces looking at me. And finally, when they got tired of watching me, that's when I woke up. I woke up to this terrible nightmare. So I decided to do something nice that day. I decided to go to the zoo and take my 2 children with me. Except I found that my dream had become a reality. Except this time, the roles were reversed. So the next time you visit the zoo, don't tease the animals. And if you can, do not permit others to tease them either. Every action of yours counts.
Still to come, how religion helped preserve forests in ancient times in ways you could never imagine, and why this nut is a tough one to crack. Raghunandan of Tumkur, Karnataka is pained by the destruction of coastal forests in his state. Pristine forests have been hacked for ginger, rubber and coffee plantations. The unique and precious biodiversity of coastal Karnataka is now literally living on the edge of utter destruction. It's ironical that modern man, despite all his advancement, is unable to strike a balance between conservation and development. Centuries ago, our ancestors actually set aside huge areas of forest land for nature to reign supreme. Some of these sacred groves, as they are called, still exist in different parts of the country. Tisha Srivastav explores these fast disappearing areas.
It is a little after sunrise and we are off to meet the Sarpanch of Mangaon, a village near Panshet Dam close to Pune. Through the early morning mist, we had our first glimpse of the serene backwaters of the dam. The only jarring sounds seemed to come from the growling engine of our launch. But as we neared the embankment, we heard the faint strains of a devotional song. Sounding almost mysterious in such a desolate area. Intrigued, we decided to find the source of this mystical music and soon came upon a group of hermits trudging uphill to a sacred grove. Now when you think of a sacred grove, you'd imagine a Panchavati or a forbidden tribal forest, called Lankiteng in Meghalaya, the Devban in Maharashtra and Kuthuvals in Tamil Nadu. They are a collective legacy of our hunting, food gathering ancestors. Imagine our surprise when all we saw here were some very big old trees with roots spreading over kilometers. We were greeted by a boisterous medley of twerps, tweeds, caws, cackles and a host of other animal how-do-you-dos.
What you see behind me is a little spring in this thick patch of forest in Mangaon near Pune. Now these large tracts of forest have been left absolutely untouched in their natural splendor since times immemorial. That is largely because these were considered sacred groves and were dedicated to the gods, and any cutting of trees or upsetting their natural equilibrium was considered sacrilegious.
Untouched by the whirling eons, trees here are at least over 600 years old. Every sacred grove is usually dedicated to a single female deity, like Jogmaya in the Aravalis or Ma Kalkai in the Konkan. It was believed that the goddess would protect the villagers' interests if they'd protect her home in the forest. You may find it hard to believe, but this simple faith helped conserve huge areas of forest. Lopping or even collecting dried wood was and is taboo. And surprisingly, even women were forbidden from entering these virgin forests. Even Kalidas observed this in his work Vikramorvasyam, written in 300 AD.
Then, ignoring the pleadings of the king, she wandered into the sacred grove of the Kumara. Her mind, bewildered by the curse of a guru, she failed to notice the transgression into an area forbidden to women. No sooner did she enter, she was transformed into a vine clinging to a tree at the boundary of the grove.
Sounds unbelievable, doesn't it? But the writ of old doesn't obviously run here any longer. We caught a villager with lopped wood and this is what he said in his defense.
यहाँ पे जब काटना मना है तो लकड़ी कैसे काटी है?
लकड़ी वो झाड़ से नीचे गिरा, वो बंदर ने ऐसा झाड़ पे जाता है ना बंदर, वो हिलाता है वो टाइम गिरता है नीचे.
Minutes later, another villager, seemingly oblivious of our earlier encounter, told us how nobody dared cut wood here after what happened to a local contractor.
वो गांव वाले ने उसको बताया था कि वो कॉन्ट्रैक्ट नहीं लेने का, वो उसने जबरदस्ती से कॉन्ट्रैक्ट लिया. कटिंग कट करने के वास्ते उसका खून बाहर आया था और वो बीमार पड़ गया और उधर से ये बन रहा है अभी तक किसने कटिंग नहीं किया.
Whether it's divine retribution or an unfortunate coincidence that fell the contractor is immaterial. That these timeless woods need to be preserved, if not respected, goes without saying. Today there is no comprehensive national survey of our sacred groves and of the animals, plants and birds found in them. Dr. V.D. Vartak, a botanist, is the rare exception who's been studying Maharashtra's groves for almost a quarter of a century now.
We call it as the index of the original undisturbed forest that must be covering that area long ago. If you ask the Bhagat or the Panchayat chief, what's about your medicinal plants? So he will say, now this is our dispensary.
Our ancients were not as foolishly sentimental as many of us believe. They may have used religious exhortations to get gullible people to protect the forests, but they also achieved much more. In Tamil Nadu, kutuvals are usually found on the windward side and acted as cyclonic barriers. Elsewhere, the grove protected the only perennial springs in the area or were the treasure trove of endangered medicinal plants, a veritable medical chest for calamities.
या राईमध्ये म्हणजे आपले कुत्र झाड म्हणून एक पाथरकुडं म्हणून त्याचा कुत्र चावल्यावर त्याचा उपचार करतात आणि चक्कर केली ना तर हे पाथरकुडाचा उपचार करतात आणि फक्त या वनराईमध्येच भेटतात ते.
Even Dr. Vartak noticed an abundance of ghanera, a rare plant used to treat blood cancer that's found only here. Tradition says the only time people were allowed to forage in the sacred grove was when there was a calamity. Isn't this a revelation of ancient wisdom?
It's a repository of biodiversity and it's sort of a gene bank, you know. One of the main reasons that the Devrais are shrinking is that the increase in pressure on land, market forces coming into play and loss of faith in worshipping nature.
Population pressures, insensitive forest departments, short-sighted temple managements and ingenious contractors are all combining to push the groves towards complete destruction. With over 700 known plant species on the verge of extinction, these areas are sacredly precious. In 1829, there were over 15,000 groves in the state of Travancore alone. Today, who knows? It was simple blind faith that protected the forests then. In the dying years of the 20th century, fear of an unseen god isn't going to protect a teak forest and the treasures it contains. In fact, no longer do activities revolve around the deities that protected local people. Today, the trees are seen as Sarkari trees. Except for Madhya Pradesh, where groves are protected as places of worship under the Indian Penal Code, there is no national policy, no uniform caretaking laws. All this may not even be necessary if people learn to call these groves their own common property resource. After all, they had done so for centuries and must do it again for their own sakes as much as nature's.
From sacred grove to sacred fruit and nut, a common offering to the gods, it's said to be a harbinger of good luck, even though its shell has been used by terrorists to plant bombs. With Sneha Koshi, we now enter the versatile world of a nut that's real hard to crack.
Tall, dark and handsome, standing head and shoulders above the rest. I'm sure you think I'm drooling over a gorgeous piece of physiognomy. I guess you're almost there. Except that I'm referring to the evergreen variety, the coconut tree. Good looks apart, this is no hard nut to crack. And because of its varied uses, it is more than welcome in every home.
Home is where the heart is, so let's start there. Life for Narasimha Arjun and Yamuna Banulekar, like any other toddy tapper, revolves around the coconut tree. The coconut tree beckons the toddy tapper at the crack of dawn when Narasimha's day begins. Tree climbing is done normally twice or thrice a day. Remember that some trees grow up to 30 feet when fully mature, and it takes a special skill to scale these trees. Narasimha collects the juice that has been dripping into the pot from the tapped shoot and takes it home to Yamuna, who distills it into feni. Though toddy tapping is their main source of livelihood, their relationship with the tree does not end here. In fact, it fashions their entire way of life. The popularity of the nut can be judged by the fact that at least one nut is consumed per family every day. This adds up to 40 million a year in a place like Goa alone. And that's not all. Every part of the coconut tree is used in one way or the other. Intricately woven coconut leaves are placed as thatch on roofs, on windows and balconies to keep out the rain or simply to fence off an area. Not even the reed of the leaf is dispensed with. They are used as brooms. When it comes to making a clean sweep, however, the fruit of the coconut takes the cake. Molasses extracted from the kernel are a popular item at the marketplace. This makes it a flourishing cottage industry. Coconut oil is another such item. The husk around the nut is kept aside to make ropes, mats and bags in every imaginable shape and size. And
it does not stop there. The coconut shell is converted into ladles, pots, lamps and decorative pieces to attract the interest of every age group. Ultimately, age and time does take its toll on the coconut tree, and like man, it eventually succumbs to nature. But even when its life ebbs away, it still lends itself to man's use. The strong bark of the tree is carved into canoes, which is the primary mode of transport in the backwaters. The bark is also used to provide the required support to slanting roofs that dot the coastal area. The entire coastal skyline is fringed by the coconut tree, giving the place a distinctive identity. From flavoring the food to giving Goa its unique character, the coconut is as much a part of Goan life as the sand and the sea. It's also a revelation of the sort of relationship man must adapt with the natural world to keep it sustainable.
So here's to the coconut. Cheers!
The present population of India is equal to the combined populations of France, Spain, Italy, United Kingdom and the Netherlands.